NAASDLA, this is like our first in person.
At least 2 years.
It's been a while. So it's actually good for us to do this. I am Friday Jones.
My name is Chad Brown.
He usually does this to me on Politics and Black, the other half.
We switching roles.
We're so glad that you guys were able to actually make it out and be here in person. And we're supposed to do an icebreaker, and we are going to allow our brother Hosel with the CBU gear on and his LA hat,
Mr. Hosel Francis,
to come do that. I'm going to allow him to lean into.
And for those that don't know Hosel, he's our resident pastor. So this brother here, he brings the word to us.
Real smooth, real easy. I can't afford that. Way my bank account is set up, I can't be tripping over no cables, messing no cables up, doing none of that. All right, well, again, my name is Hosel Francis. Good to see all of y'all in public, in real life, off the screen, live in person. So we'll just a couple of you guys may want to answer the question, and it's just, how does it feel to be out here in public again, like with people that are on the same page as you as far as reparations are concerned? And what do you hope to gain by, you know what I'm saying, socializing and getting with this group? So if there's anybody want to share their thoughts on that, feel free to offer your thoughts. Yes.
Yeah, I own 190.
Let me walk it over there.
$90 on my student loan, so I want to wipe that out.
Hey, speak your mind, brother. Speak your mind. Go ahead and share your heart.
Just real quick. So just so I understand, brother, so you're going to be asking questions, and then the audience is going to be
Right.
Okay, so can we borrow one of your mics?
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Do y'all want to check a mic
I don't know
around?
what the little hat, shower hat stay on. I don't know.
You know, you gotta keep it dry.
Test one.
We're just trying to make sure everybody doing all right in here.
I'm gonna pass the mic around. All right. So whoever wants to answer, then I'm gonna hand you guys the mic, and you guys can go ahead and do your thing. Speak your speech. All right.
Yeah. Okay. So y'all want to answer? You want me to come up with a different question? All right. Well, I'll ask the question again. How does it feel to be back in public with people that are, of the same mindset as you? And what do you hope to gain or accomplish or contribute by being a part of this community?
Reparations community.
Reparations. At the end of the day, better quality of life for us as Black people in the state of California. And ultimately, we are here. We come from a mother and a father, and so we need families. And, ultimately, that's my goal. I love seeing Black people together because, they show the worst of us most of the time. So that's what I hope to gain from this.
All right, appreciate that.
Test.
And if you could introduce yourself as well, that would be helpful.
Where you from? Let's know where you came from.
I'm Jakarta. I came from Sherman Oaks, and I am very happy. I did not want to drive down here, but it's important, and I understand that you're doing it in this location. But there are a lot of Black people in Sherman Oaks as well, so I'm hoping that you guys can maybe make some rounds and get up to the valley so that Black people can be in that area, can be more involved in the reparations movement. I want property, I want land, I want everything that they took from my family, and I want that 100-fold. So I am very focused on manifesting that, and that's why I stay abreast of everything that's going on. And as they say, so goes California, so goes the nation. So we're about to get these checks cut from not only California, but also from all the different corporations and everything like that owes us money, the banks, everything. We got to get real focused on who we are going to get this money from and make those demands. And I'm glad that there's an organization like yours that is being a watchdog on the actual task force. So I want to thank you once again. I always do in every meeting that I can attend. And I'll always be here, and anything that I can do, just let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead and give her a round of applause. Ain't nothing wrong with it. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead and put them hands together. She's talking real business over here. Anybody else want to share their thoughts on this Question? Well,
No one, takers, anyone?
All right, go ahead now. Come on now, we at church now. Don't get nothing started.
Oh, I gotta stand up. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tiffany Quarles. I'm with NAASDLA and CJEC. And what I hope to get is justice for my family. My family came out here in the 40s during the Great Migration. It came to a segregated California. So I want everything that was stolen back, that was redlined. That's why I'm in this fight. So.
Nice. All right. Who's next? Next, we want to hear from the family. What's going on?
Anybody else? Okay, all right.
Man.
How's everybody going? Or how's everybody doing? My name is Marcus Champion. I'm with NAASDLA. I'm from Inglewood. Actually was born in Sinella Hospital down the way. My mom still lives around the corner. We've been living for the last about 30 years now. And so in terms of being back out with everybody, I just look at what COVID was. COVID was supposed to be bad in terms of just our advocacy, but we grew exponentially in that almost 2 years now, to the point where we talk to the White House, we on California Reparations Task Force, we're making this real. So it just feels good to be back in the presence of everybody. So let's just keep growing.
All right. Well, I'll just share my thoughts on it. Me personally, I was born and raised right here, LA area. Grew up off of 94th and Van Ness. Been living in different parts of the city. Went to LAUSD the whole time. So I'm a baby of this environment right here. But at the same time, I found myself going through the penal system and some of the other things, some of the other traps and pitfalls that are out there. And as I was in there, I was noticing how weaponized these things are against us. I came to the realization that it's a game, hustle, it's an industry. And, I was in there for hustling, so I wasn't really feeling working on this fire crew for 24-hour shifts to make $1 an hour. So I'm like, wait a minute, this is a business. And so once I understood that it was just a big time hustle, it kind of opened my eyes. And then over the course of time, I met some of his brothers and sisters, and I've been knowing Marcus since I was a kid. And so once he kind of pulled me into the circle, it was like I was able to kind of see things from a different perspective, having been in the system, having done some things here and there throughout the streets and so on and so forth. And then now being involved in the church and seeing some of the deficits that the church in general, because we're in church, I don't want to get in no trouble, but the church in general should be feeling and should be stepping up to the plate in ways that the church historically has, but at this point isn't. And so we need to return back to that. Like the brother right here said, we need to get our family structures back in order. We need to get our institutions back in order. And so, along with all the, the other things that come along with reparations, we also need to be doing that as well. And that's what we represent today. And so I thank you all for your participation in this portion of our program, and I'll hand it back to the real ones over here.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks, Brother Ozell. So we're gonna go ahead and I think we're done with this. How do I get to the next?
Oh, okay, you wanna go?
Yeah, let's get into our program. Very often we hear that there is a moral argument to reparations. And I come from a business background, and I say there's no morality in reparations because it was slavery was an immoral business. It was an immoral business. It was an immoral business. And to the extent that it was an immoral business, we really have to make sure that we understand that repairing us is a business. And that means that there has to be dollars. That means, like the sister said, there has to be land allocated. It means it has to be the rebuilding of our families. And all of that becomes our business. So I want to first recognize our sponsor, the folks that made this possible, the Freedmen's Bureau of California.
Absolutely.
Justice and Repair Organization. They bought you all some lovely food, so please make sure you have a snack or two. I want to recognize CJEC, the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California. They really have been the watchdogs at the, oh, that New York came out, didn't it? The watchdogs. They really have been the watchdogs for the state of California and how the state moves and making sure that this task force and the Department of Justice, because the task force falls under the Department of Justice, making sure the Department of Justice is accountable. And the Department of Justice, don't get it twisted, they are a bunch of smart attorneys that work for the state of California. And so that is not an easy task. So we want to recognize CJEC.
Department of Justice has never been about black folks either.
Yeah, there is also that. I want to recognize NAASDLA. I want to recognize ETM Media. You can follow them on YouTube. They stream and have the task force hearings up on YouTube before the state has their own hearings up on the website. So you want to follow them.
They are the only media
Yes.
outlet streaming the task force meetings as
ETM Media.
You can find them on YouTube.
What is it again?
ETM,
In the mass media group.
Emend the Mass Media Group. But the only outlet streaming what is probably one of the most consequential, meetings or task forces since, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So shout out to ETM for all y'all doing.
Yeah, for all your hard work, because we see it. So this is meant to be participatory. So we want to hear from y'all. Don't make me if I get up.
You didn't shout us out.
I did. I started with NAASDLA.
What about Politics in Black? You forgot to do
Politics
that?
in Black. Okay. Look, man, I drove here from San Diego. I've been up since 6 o'clock in the morning. My co-host, Chad Brown. I am Friday Jones. You can follow us on social media.
Yeah, tap in. We had some good conversations lately on the show. Some things that are very relevant to what we are discussing here, very relevant to AB 3121, the work being done there. What we're trying to do on Politics in Black is reinforce the messaging, spread it wide, make sure our people are educated, they know what's happening, and we're introducing you to members of the task force as well, so you know who's sitting in Sacramento or around. I guess at this point they're meeting back via Zoom, coming back in person.
They're coming back to person.
Coming back in person, but want to make sure you know those task force members and you understand who's doing this work and that your voices are heard. So please, if you're in this room, you know the importance of AB 3121. When those meetings are occurring, get on the phone, get in the chat, send emails. They want to hear from our community.
All right. Am I written down? What? There we go.
Oh, and before we move on, quick shout out to ETM because they do have a community call-in show that they do on Tuesdays. Is that right? Every Tuesday. So they recap the AB 3121 task force meetings. They talk about any major things in the news that we as a community need to be aware of. So on Tuesdays, ETM Media, check out their community call-in show. Again, pick up the phone, get your voice heard.
And I want to shout out Chris Logsden. He couldn't be here today. Chris Logsden and Art. They're in Northern California, but they are just like us here at NAASDLA, representing in Northern California for this reparations advocacy that we do. So I guess I'm going to keep going about CJEC. Okay, so the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California, CJEC, is a grassroots statewide coalition of community members and organizations working for reparations and equity here in the state of California. Our coalition includes members representing LA, San Diego, the Inland Empire, San Bernardino County, and the Bay Area and Sacramento. You can go to CJECofficial.org if you want to actually get direct information about the task force from that organization.
And there are several members of CJEC in the room. If you're with CJEC, could you just raise your hand so folks can identify you, know who you are?
All right.
So, we in here.
We in here. Oh, we got blank spaces. Okay. So this is just more of the things that have been going on. You can obviously involved with community meetings. Um,
Don't forget ARC.
yeah.
And don't forget ARC. So ARC is another organization that's a member-
American Redress
Yeah.
Coalition,
Part
at
of CJEC.
gmail.com. If
Yeah.
you're in Northern California visiting with us, Politics in Black, that is where we do our education arm for NAASDLA. Chad just talked to you about the programming. Here we have ETM Media, CJEC at the top. We're here today about this task force, so we want you to just be engaged and participate. Okay. Chad.
Oh, me? Okay. So just to talk a little bit about the California Reparations Task Force, I know everybody in this room is tuned in. You already probably know a lot about this task force, but we just want to make sure we're setting a baseline for you. So in 2020, actually in September 2020, California created the first in nation reparations task force. The law creating the state reparations task force is called AB 3121. That was signed by Gavin Newsom on September 30th, 2020, which a few of us in this room were at the signing ceremony. The task force is tasked with several things, but here are the top three. Number one, to study and collect evidence for reparations with a focus on California. So they're looking at a broad effects of slavery across the nation, but their first and foremost focus is here in California. They want to find ways to educate the public about their findings and their data discovery. So that's what we're making sure the community, we're having listening sessions, we're hearing back from you. And then finally, they're going to develop actual reparations proposals. This is key because this is the part that's missing from the federal. This task force here in California is actually going to come up with to address the system and the legacy of slavery here specifically for Black California. So that's a key difference. Please be. They're going to talk about who's eligible. So they're going to talk about who's eligible, how much it will cost, what forms it will take, and how much it will cost. And they want to hear from you once again. So if you have thoughts on this, you have opinions. Task force wants to hear from you. Number three, the California Reparations Task Force has 9 members. 5 of those members were appointed by the governor, Gavin Newsom. 2 were appointed by the president of the Senate, Tony. 2 were appointed by the Speaker of the Assembly. We are very lucky to have the chairperson of the task force. We are very lucky to have the chairperson of the task force with us here today. She's going to come up and we're going to talk to her a little bit. She's going to answer some questions as well. Oh, Dr. Grills. Welcome. I didn't recognize you with the mask. Oh, I didn't recognize you with the mask. Good to see you. Good to see you, Dr. Grills. Good to see you. And it's complete in 2023. So some baseline facts for you. A lot more in depth, and we'll talk about more of what CJEC's doing, what we're trying to accomplish in partnership with the task force. And here are our lovely task force members. So, starting top left, Senator Stephen Bradford from the California State Senate. Dr. Amos C. Brown, who is a civil rights activist and also a pastor in San Francisco. I can't remember the name of his church. Third Baptist Church in San Francisco. Dr. Cheryl Grills, who we just said hello to in the back of the room. She can join us today. Lisa Holder, who Lisa is a professor. Attorney. Assembly member Reginald Jones Sawyer, who is the state. Dr. Jovan Lewis, who is a professor. Yep. Miller Moore, who is an attorney, local Los Angeles. And Councilmember Monica Montgomery Scott, who is down in San Diego. And then Attorney Don Tamaki, who actually came to speak to us on our last broadcast. So get familiar with him if you want to go watch the last Politics in Black.
And we started Meet the Task but you have to understand different methodologies, if you will, for the act of reparations. And that at times means going back into the history books. That at times means going into international space. That means talking to different economists that have different methods for their calculations when it comes to compensation. And it's important that on Politics in Black, one of the things that we often do is share materials. We share books. We want you to read. We want you to, when you're engaged with someone who's opposed to reparations, we want you to not be able to just talk about whatever your emotional position is, but we want you to be able to speak intelligently to the case for reparations. So I just want to share that and talk a little bit about From Here to Equality.
Yeah, so From Here to Equality by Dr. William Sandy Darity and his partner A. Kirsten Mullen, published in 2019, really is a guidebook for what reparations could look like for us in this modern day. I mean, Dr. Darity has been studying Black reparations for 3 decades. So he is the foremost authority in the country and has put a lot of thought, a lot of effort, a lot of sweat equity into coming up with not just a abstract idea of reparations, but really putting concrete details to it and charting out a plan and a pathway, as well as giving some, very, very thoughtful rebuttals to some of the opposition that we hear commonly to Black reparations or Black American reparations. So as a starting point, if you have not picked up From Here to Equality, please, please, please grab that book, make that top of your reading list, do book clubs, share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your networks in the churches that you go to, in the schools where you are. That is a book that we need to socialize throughout our community, and we all need to read it. Just as we all have a Bible in our houses, we all need a copy of From Here to Equality.
And I want to put a couple of more books. I wasn't thinking about this, but since I'm on this vein, I'm going to stay here for a second. We have, I think he's a Yale professor, Dr. Pablo DeGrief. What's the name of that book, Marcus? The Handbook to Reparations is another very good book that you should consider reading.
That's a tough one to find.
It's a thick book, but it's very comprehensive. From a spiritual, we're in the church from a spiritual perspective. It's a thick book. And it has a red. It is reparations, and it has a red label on it. They all have the name reparations in them, but no, they all have the name reparations. Perspective is called Reparations. Pablo DeGrief is the Handbook for Reparations, and then From Here to Equality was the first book that we named. And there's the one that was on the last show.
Redress?
Yes.
Yeah, Redress by John Tateishi. And that book really covers the process that the Japanese Americans went through for reparations for their internment during World War II.
Okay.
So
yeah.
that's a good read to see that reparations are possible. What I love about that book is it's called Redress: The Successful Campaign for Japanese American Reparations. And so I'm hoping to see the book one day about our successful campaign.
Hey now. Okay. So we're gonna learn together. Yeah. Reparations. 5 forms of reparations the California Reparations Task Force could consider. We have compensation, restitution, rehabilitation, satisfaction, and guarantees of non-repetition. I believe those are the 5 principles that come from international-based models for reparations. Reparations is making amends for a wrong done by paying money and helping those who have been wronged. Reparations is for what slavery, Jim Crow, harms that are done today, and the modern harms that we know, of course, is the war on drugs and the prison industrial complex. This country really imprisons people at the highest rate. No one imprisons more people, and unfortunately, the reality is Black men in particular are most negatively impacted from our prison industrial complex. So
yeah, just to reemphasize that point, because a lot of the pushback that you'll hear as you start talking about reparations was slavery was oh so long ago, right? No one's alive today that was a slave. No one's alive today that owned slaves. But what we're saying is this isn't just reparations for slavery. Number one, it wasn't that long ago. But number two, we're not just talking about slavery. We're talking about all the ensuing atrocities that continue today. So you heard Friday talking about mass incarceration, police brutality. We still have disparities. I always tell the story because I've lived in several different cities around this country. Everywhere I've been, Black folks are at the bottom. That's not by accident. That's not because anything's wrong with us. That's because of systemic white supremacy. And so we have to recognize that, and that's what we're trying to repair, is that system of white supremacy that comes out of the institution of slavery. Yes, sir. I'll take a question.
Thank you. Since you brought up white supremacy, we all should take a look at the treatment of African American people by KKK, white supremacist groups, and also by the police brutality that has taken lives of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and whoever else has been harmed by the police, because this is a serious problem and it's not going anywhere.
I couldn't agree with you more, brother. My family's from Mississippi, so if you say KKK, that hits me at home. So I couldn't agree with you more. That is all part of what we're trying to address here, starting with reparations, but really a comprehensive Black agenda to change the systems in this society that keep us at this bottom casted position. Yes,
I know
ma'am.
you guys are probably going to talk about this, but I think literacy, education, things of that nature, because, there is a concern in the community, obviously, of getting lump sums of money and then not knowing what to do with it.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that's
I
being
will say that's only a
specifically-
concern for us.
No, I get that. But it is a concern, right? Because financial illiteracy in our community is pretty high.
Mhm.
I had to teach myself,
Yep.
just a quick, small story. But my parents did leave my brother and I some money, and we didn't know that my dad was sitting on 12 acres of land until he died. He did not have a will.
Mhm.
I tried to handle it myself, being ignorant at the time, lost everything.
Yep.
And it was an aha moment for me, because then I had to go and start reading books and teaching myself and taking classes so that I can understand that situation. And I know so many of my friends and families, regardless of their economic status, who are in similar situations of financial ignorance. So I think it could help.
No, I don't disagree with you. I just think it's hard to learn about finances when you don't have it. And so all I would say is that we need to focus as a people on the repairing of the damage. So when I say reparations, number one, we're talking about money, right? We're talking about money. Everybody in the room agree we're talking about money?
yes, this
Okay.
is the business of repairing us.
Okay.
We are talking
So-
about money.
So what I want to see is I want to see you get the money, and then we can learn what to do with the money.
Look, we can learn right now. I got a book for y'all. There's an attorney. You are talking about inheriting 12 acres. Heirs property was intended to keep us from owning property outright.
Absolutely.
It was built that way, and is very prevalent in the South. There's an attorney by the name of Janine Hishaw, Hishaw. She's written a couple of books, and one speaks specifically to farming and heirs property. The other one speaks specifically to owning land and possibly losing that land when you're applying for Social Security benefits. And that's something that we don't talk about. I read.
Yeah. And-
Chad made the joke earlier, but the truth is, we read and we want you to read.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that book, the books that Jillian Hishaw has, she is someone who has written policy at President Biden's level. And so what she's sharing in terms of information, that's part of that financial literacy that we need in advance of the reparations.
And I also want to say just real quickly, we also need to understand that we don't want to put any preconditions on our reparations, right? No, so no, I know that's not what you're saying, but I just, because there are people out there who will say that, who will say, well, you need financial literacy. Black people are some of the most entrepreneurial, smartest group in this country. Anytime that we've had an opportunity, we have, you hear about Tulsa, you hear about Rosewood, you hear about Greenwood. We are builders, we are entrepreneurs, right? So they didn't ask the Japanese to learn about money before they paid. They didn't ask the Jewish community to learn about money before they paid. I know, I'm saying this for the other.
For the audience, for the folks watching on the YouTube.
Because
Right.
you will hear this. You will hear this as you go out and talk about reparations. They'll say, oh, Black folks, they just squander their money. We are no less bad with money than any other group. They have multiple bankruptcy laws on the books for white people that are bad spending their money.
Like,
so we have to as a community, don't let them tell you something is wrong with you uniquely, because there's nothing wrong with us. Right?
and just to give you, our number 1 and 2 spending dollars are on housing and transportation, which means we need somewhere to live and we need to get to work.
Amen.
So we know how to take care of money. I'm just generally speaking. NAASD stands for the National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants. The members of our organization, whether here in LA or in other parts of the country, are direct descendants of people enslaved here in the United States. And so for us, our advocacy is about making reparations for Black Americans who descend from US slavery specifically. And that's where our advocacy work is that is always going to be the focus. That's always going to be the center, because we literally, we have, their blood in our blood and in our veins and in our DNA. And we have our family stories. We have our family folklores. We have our family losses. And we have our family's great migration. And it's with us. It's part of us. It's living. It wasn't just a couple of years ago. And I always argue with the folks who want to say slavery was so long ago. For some people, peonage ended in 1960, in the 60s. So do not let anyone play that game, because someone will talk about slavery and won't know what peonage is. We're here to educate you so that you're informed and so that you can self-advocate, whether we continue as an organization, whether we stop tomorrow. We want to build you up in a way. We're not stopping, but we want to build you up in a way that if we fall down, it's 10 of you that are prepared behind us to keep going.
This is a community effort, y'all. Like, understand that. This is not me, Friday, or anybody. This is all of us. Yes, sir.
Yeah, how harmful is the CRT critical race theory, the denial of it?
Oh, he gonna make me stand up.
You didn't put one in the strike zone.
Oh
for
my
Friday.
gosh. Okay, look, the average person doesn't even know what critical race theory is. And I want to make it very succinct so you guys here, anybody watching on the internet, knows what it is. Critical race theory is something that has been taught in law schools for decades, okay? The conversation is, can we take critical race theory and break it down for grades K through 12 to make it digestible for young people? The reason that there is an uproar is because critical race theory is about looking at policy and looking at the effects of the policy and looking at whether there has been a negative or a positive racial impact. And if it's been a negative racial impact to whoever, any group of people, then making legislative policy to fix it. So why on a good green American earth would the folks who have been in power want to start teaching that across the board to everybody's children, including their own? So that is the dilemma. And I want you guys to be very intentional. Cotton is his last name, Tom Cotton. I think his first name is Tom Cotton, is a Congress member from Arkansas. He has a bill, and I'm not going to get the numbers right, but if you follow me, it's my pinned tweet on Twitter. Cotton his family, even though he's from Arkansas, his family is from the same county that my family is from in North Carolina. And it's a small rural town. And the Black Cottons are buried in the Black cemetery called Mary's Chapel. And his family were cotton owners. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And he has legislation right now that is effectively saying that in the US military, you cannot teach race-based ideology of our military. Need to call your legislators and oppose that. In addition to him, in the critical race theory space, Representative Chip Roy, who's from Texas, he actually has a bill, and his bill number I do know, I believe it's 3196, 3193, something like that. It says you can't teach race-based ideology from elementary school, middle school, high school, and college. In the state of California, last year, Dr. Shirley Weber, the same author who authored AB 3121, she got ethnic studies put through at the high school level. Chip Roy's bill at the federal level would cancel our bill at the state level. And so it's very important that, I'm glad you asked that question, but that we stay engaged, because reparations sometimes is in the right now. And if you guys know the Daughters of the Confederacy, they wrote our history books for 100 years and they whitewashed history. And we cannot have that done and happen again. John Tetieshi said that he was in college when he learned that his parents had been interned. And so this is one issue that affects us greatly because we understand the South, we understand white supremacy. It affects other communities as well. And this is something where we really can have some sort of allyship, because critical race theory is important. If I can't tell you that you ran this 110 freeway through all the Black communities and it devastated our businesses, and we can't teach that, then how the heck can we make new legislation to repair that? Very important stuff. So calls to action besides the critical race theory, Chip Roy, Tom Cotton, no on their bills. Help us achieve our goals, sign up and volunteer. We have sheets going around that Tish, I think, has been making sure you all
and
sign up.
that's very important, family. Signing up when we have calls to action, because what we do is mobilize the community. We want to get your help in calling our local representatives. We want to get your help emailing them. We want you using your social media for this cause. So when we put out calls to action, those calls are going to you, going to our community, and we need you to step up.
We want you to attend our next new volunteer orientation. And that, I believe, is through CJEC. If you go to CJEC official,
yeah, you can go through CJEC or you can go through NAASDLA.
Yeah, we want to get you started. So we have Q&A, Chad.
All right, so audience questions. So how did you learn about the California Reparations Task Force? So I guess we'll just open this up. And if anybody wants to come up and tell us, your thoughts, how you learned about the California Reparations Task Force, what types or forms of reparations would you be looking for? Or how and why did your family come to California? If you want to give us a little of your family history, tell us where you're from, what brought you here. This is open for you, family. So any questions that you have, we're happy to take them at this point.
You guys come up to the podium, please, with your questions.
And while you guys are thinking of your questions, I wanted to say just one thing about the CRT point you made, brother. The work that this California Reparations Task Force is doing is absolutely in opposition to all the anti-CRT propaganda that you're hearing right now. Because what you're seeing this task force do is bring in expert witnesses, collect expert testimony, so they can put together a real record of the history here in California. Because I moved to California 10 years ago. I had no idea about half of the things that I've learned in this process of the task force and what has occurred Never heard of Bruce Beach till I got out here, right? What's up north? Up north, Allensworth. Never heard of that, right? Exactly. So the history here is being unearthed, and that is what we have to do to combat this anti-CRT, foolishness. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, hello. Hi, my name is Deborah Martinez. I'm a native of Los Angeles, and I had never heard of Bruce's Beach either until they, thank God, got their land back. But I got familiar with the two of you because I saw you on a show on Fox. I can't think of the name of it. Yeah.
Foxhole.
That one keeps on haunting us.
Right. I saw you guys on Foxhole, followed you on social media.
Thank you.
Got the book, read the book by Dr. Darity, and changed my life.
Absolutely.
And I just want to say that years ago, when I read the book about Ta-Nehisi Coates and really kind of just first heard about reparations, whenever the book came out, I read that and said, oh, we're never going to get reparations. That's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've evolved over the course of the years. And now I feel like this country cannot continue to exist unless
That's
we
right.
do get our reparations.
That's right.
That's
Absolutely.
how passionate I feel about that.
Absolutely.
So, I just want to be a part of this, and I'm educating myself and, want to be involved any way I can. I'm educating my family, my friends, and
Yes.
they're all engaged in it because it's just a debt that is owed to us.
That's
And
right.
all of these ills that we are experiencing right now are a result of our, years of slavery and Jim Crow and being denied our rightful place in society. And so that's kind of how I feel about it. And I'm just, anxious to get involved. And I thank you for all of your work and
Thank
all
you,
of your
sister.
efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And what you just heard that sister say is she at one point thought reparations wasn't possible. But then she started to listen, she learned, she's self-educating, she's showing up, right, in person to these meetings as all of you have, and she's in this fight now. And that's what we need. We need you in your homes. When you're sitting around Christmas dinner this year, pick a fight with somebody over reparations, right? I know you got somebody. I know you got somebody in your family that's gonna say, no, we're not doing no, right? Go ahead and have that conversation, and have that conversation with good information. Have Dr. Darity's book with you. Have some highlights in that you want to point out to people. Because at the end of the day, all of us know this in our souls that this is the righteous justice that's been denied to us. We know this. And if you're in this country and you live in this life, you live in the same lives that we all live and experience, this is the your church members, your pastors, get out there and be a warrior for this truth and this justice. Thank you, sister, for that. That was powerful. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else want to talk about what types of reparations would they accept? Or how your family came to California? No? Okay, we got a hand. We got two
Come on
hands.
back.
I forgot about the part of what type we want to accept. I feel like there needs to be land involved as well as cash payouts.
Yep.
So maybe I'd like to learn more about that. But I heard Minister Farrakhan say at one point that African Americans need like 8 states, with like access to the sea and stuff like that. I don't know how viable that is, but I know that we do need land. I feel as a part of this. To California from Louisiana, that great migration deal. So, I'm proud to be here, but we have to make this country, everything that it says it claims to be. And until we get our debt paid from all the contributions that we made to this country, it's just not gonna be okay.
That's absolutely right, sister. And if you've read From Here to Equality, you'll know that Dr. Darity and Kirsten Mullen, they put out a very specific goal for reparations, which is closure of the racial wealth gap. And if you understand that disparity, at 14% of the population, we have less than 3% of the wealth, right? There's 1 out of 4 white families is net worth $1 million plus. 4% of Black America million plus in net worth. We are at the bottom across the board in every area of social economic activity. We have to recognize that. I don't care what you've been able to do individually, you are not going to be able to rise only as far as your collective is able to rise. And we have to understand that. So I'm sorry, sister, go ahead.
Yeah, I come from a long line of struggle back in the days
Amen.
of civil rights to militancy to the whole 9 yards, the Black Student Union, Black Workers Congress, all of that kind of thing. And I heard about it on KGFJ, and I said, oh, I didn't even know people were still doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And because I got caught up in the labor movement and a whole bunch of stuff, raising kids and the whole 9 yards. And I was, my granddaughter just graduated from father came from Marietta, Georgia.
I know Marietta.
And he didn't come like a tourist. They ran his out because he was known. They ran him out because he was known as a race man. So when we were going back to deal with this family situation, my son, we were looking, we said, well, we need to find out if there are any descendants. Still there. We go through the I guess they have it in some there. You can see who the people, there are no Black people living in Marietta anymore. It's literally, well, there's some because on the to get to where we are today. And I'm so proud of you because there was a time that was the most militant thing you could talk about to see how well it's developed and the leadership that. And I'm so proud of you guys to have done. And I just wanted
Thank you, sister.
I just wanted to express that, you know.
And understand what this sister just said is she's been in the fight for a long time. We would not be here if it wasn't for what you've already done.
I'm 75 years old.
And,
That's how.
please clap for that. Please clap for that. Look around this room, y'all. You got all ages from all over. You got babies in here, right? This is the community that it takes to get us to this goal. It's not just the young folks. It's not just the older folks. I guess I'll put myself in the older folks category. But it's all of us. It's all of our community that has to
The whole thing to organize, and I think we can do it. I know we can do it.
Oh, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. Yeah. Thank you, sister. Thank you for that. One more question.
I got 1,000. I want to know how it is
You know, because some of us don't have the records to say, and I know.
So one of the things that we did prior to COVID, and I'm hoping that we can get back to it, is we used to do field trips to the Mormon church, because the Mormon church actually has some of the most comprehensive records. Their website, I think, is familysearch.org, which is free. They used to
partners with Ancestry, and then they kind of broke away because I guess they felt the information should be free, so it's free. But when you go on the site there, one, they have trained genealogists. Two, they're trained in indigenous histories, and they're also trained in our Black American histories. So I always kind of start there, because I find they don't do just their own records. They actually have licensing with other I don't know, folks who have archives.
They purchased the Freedmen's Bureau records as well.
Yeah, and so like that is where I point people to, and hopefully we'll get to those field trips soon. We need to transition, but we're going to do some questions. We have one, two. We have one, two.
One more. We have one more.
Oh, familysearch.org.
Another good one is archives.com. It's only $9.99. Usually chase, start and literally chase, get those, start with your family. First of all, get those Bibles that you have. Obituaries, you got it. All you need is a verb, and you start going back and back and back and back and back. Then, also too, I utilize these things, kind of what we do.
Right.
One of the things that, one of the things about that one is that it's a real nominal, not you, but you go now regarding it. There's also information called
Ted,
Sorry.
can you tell us the microphone?
Oh,
She don't have to repeat it, we gotta repeat it.
That society, because that society has a several IIT.
And that was the African American Genealogy Society.
Oh, and I just wanted to add that, you know, once the task force sends their findings, they should open up an agency that will help you find your genealogy, because obviously that's going to be a very thorough process. So I feel like you can do it on your own, but I feel like that's going to have to be a part of the process. And get that for Japanese Americans. I forget the name of the agency. That's probably one of the things that will come
Some sort of
state-based agency. Some sort of state-based agency will hire professional genealogists.
I just wanted to
add that.
What Tiffany just described is something that CJEC is actively working on proposals for. So if you're interested in the area of genealogy, hit up CJEC, get involved, bring your ideas. Again, this is community work. We need all of it. And so with that, I think we're transitioning. All right, and I just, it's hard for me to put into words, we have so many living heroes, young, old, so it's hard to describe someone that's doing work that you see is truly historic, and is doing it in a way that makes us proud as a community. Camilla Moore, chairwoman of the
Attorney chair
of the AB 312 task force. When we met, she was fresh out of law school, I believe, and just had a fire for reparations. Unlike I had seen from anybody who just she wasn't worried about opening up a law office. She was worried about how we're going to get reparations. And she has taken the reins of this task force, and she has gotten it in a way that makes all of us proud. So I just want to recognize her here in front of the community, because she's one of us. She's from right around the way, as far as I understand, right? And she is doing work at the state level that is not only historic, but monumental, is going to leave and change this country moving forward. So Camilla, thank you. With that, Camilla Moore, y'all.
Well, thank you all for coming. This is such a great turnout. As Chad and Friday said, my name is Camila Moore. I'm from Lamert Park. My mom is here. Hi, Mom. In the back. Bye.
Oh, hey, Camilla's mom. See, I didn't know that. Stand up, stand up, stand up. Yeah. Thank you for Camilla.
I mean, I would love to just get to the questions. I'm just here to be a resource and an advocate. I will say, I can't speak on behalf of the task force, but I am speaking here as an individual and here to answer any questions you have about the task force.
Come on, Mike.
How you doing? I'm trying to figure out when exactly we're gonna start getting these payments rolled out. I thought it was supposed to be first quarter this year.
Yeah, to answer your question, so part of AB 3121, the bill text, we have to hire an economist. Let me just take this off. We have to hire an economist that will calculate any compensation payments and then decide like the methodologies or the instrumentalities for which that compensation should be paid out. So we're currently in the process of securing that economist. That's really all I could say.
Yeah, no, I'll add to that answer, Mike. So with the Japanese reparations, that entire process took about 18 years from beginning of campaign, when they just started advocating for it, to when checks were cut. Now, the commission for Japanese reparations was about 3 years or so. So we have to fight the urge to skip the steps that are necessary to get us to the real goal, right? Okay. So I hear you. I'm the same way. When we're gonna get the checks cut, right? But at the end of the day, we got to put the work in to make sure the checks are right when they get cut.
True. And the next thing I'll ask is what has been done in the sense of the lineage, like the lineage requirement for us to get reparations. Like, what was the task force done in regards to that?
Yeah, I can answer that. So you look very familiar, by the way. I don't know. I'm like,
Mike been around. He's been around. Yeah.
Okay. So we started to have a series of conversations around the community of eligibility, starting at our September hearing. So at our December hearing, which was just wrapped up a few days ago, we brought in Professor Eric Miller, who is a professor at Loyola Law School, to kind of continue our conversation about who should be eligible for reparations. And that's a conversation that will continue. In January, we are planning to bring Secretary of State Shirley Weber to come speak to the task force because, as we all know, she was the lead author of the bill. And so we definitely want to hear from her about what she thinks about the conversation. And we're also planning to bring on to the task force, I believe, Dean Erwin Chemerinsky, who also has an opinion on this. And I think
no, absolutely. So on our last episode of Politics in Black, we were able to speak to Dean Erwin Chemerinsky. He is the dean of UC Berkeley Law and one of the foremost constitutional scholars in the country. He's actually argued in front of the Supreme Court, I believe, 7 times or so. And he was the lawyer that argued the recent Comcast versus Byron Allen's company for the Civil Rights Act of 1866. So Dean Erwin Chemerinsky is recognized widely as the leading authority on the Constitution. So he came to Politics in Black, and we asked him the same question, because for those that are aware, here in California, we have what's called Prop 209 that stands in the way of doing anything on the basis of race when it comes to education, employment, or contracting. And so obviously, being in California, AB 3121 occurring, we wanted to get an opinion from someone like a Chemerinsky on is Prop 209 going to stand in the way of any proposals, any reparations that come out of the California body? What he told us was very clear, without any equivocation, that if what we do is move forward on us, then we are able to avoid any potential challenges from a Prop 209, which is supposed to only prevent special treatment on the basis of race. So that's locally, right? So lineage works in California. Then he opened it up to the federal effort because reparations at the end of the day is federal. Federal government's responsible. Only the federal government has the money to pay it. So at the federal level, we have the 14th Amendment, which equal protection for all groups, right? And so he also let us know that, or told us that in his opinion, as the foremost constitutional, scholar in the country, that going on the basis of lineage at the federal level for reparations also protects us from constitutional challenges of equal protection. So, when I'm talking to somebody that's smarter than me, I listen, right? And he's been in front of the Supreme Court. He has, he's probably more familiar with the Constitution than anybody else I've ever talked to. Maybe you studied it as well, but I listen to that, right? And so, to your point, Mike, that's a conversation that the task force is currently grappling with. I speak, Friday Eyes, the folks in these advocacy orgs are speaking to the task force regularly on this topic. And, in our opinion, it's lineage. And I know that's your opinion as well. And so now it's just a matter of making sure that we are being thoughtful in how we craft that messaging, right? And we're being thoughtful on how we make sure that that is the correct basis and that is what gets to all of us. And I'll add that the Japanese went through the same thing. They went through the exact same conversation. Now, it wasn't at the same scale that we're dealing with it on, but it was the same type of conversation. They made the right decision. They got that successful campaign done. We need to make the right decisions, get that successful campaign done as well.
And just to follow up, as someone who's studied like reparations movements, not only in the domestic context, but in the international context, these issues around like eligibility are very common to Chad's point. We saw that with the Japanese movement. But I will say that, the question about eligibility, it can evoke a lot of emotions. It invokes, people's politics. But what I really do appreciate about how this task force has approach the question is that we're trying to resolve the legal considerations first as it relates to eligibility. That's why, Member Holder suggested bringing in Professor Eric Miller to, speak to the legal considerations around the concept of eligibility. And that's why I think we're hoping to get Weber and even Dean Chemerinsky to add to that conversation.
Thank you.
And
thank you for your service.
just a question for you, Camilla, on that. So, we've been telling folks we want them emailing, we want them calling the task force. So as they give you or send in opinions on eligibility, is that reaching you guys? Is that something that you're seeing?
Yes, absolutely. The emails are definitely reaching us. I constantly am in communication with the DOJ, having them forward emails to members of the task force. So any and all public comment through the phone, through email, is definitely being received and taken into consideration.
Thank you for that.
Okay, I have one question. I'm sorry. It's hard. I'm like sharing the mic. So a question I have, the Tulsa, Oklahoma task force happened, I think, in the 90s. I think it was mid 90s. They came up with their recommendations and it went nowhere. So my question is, what is going to be written in 2022? What is going to happen with that report?
Well, the report is, we decided at the September hearing that the report will be published in 2 parts. So the first part of the report, which will contain 12 sections, mainly about the history of slavery and anti-Black discrimination, that will be published June 2022. So this upcoming year in June. And then our second part of the report will be published in 2023. And those parts of the second report will cover the actual reparation proposals, concepts about eligibility and things like that. So it's a 2-part report. One will be published in June 2022 and the other will be published the following year. But to answer your question, I think this will be a groundbreaking report, and we will use this report as leverage when it comes down to lobbying for reparations in the California state legislature. So I do think it will have some teeth.
Yeah, I wanted to sort of piggyback off of that. Can you sort of speak to the audience about once the proposals are complete, like the process it needs to go through, just so people understand just, the whole, like the task force is creating the proposals, then what happens with those proposals?
Yes. So once the task force creates the actual reparations proposals, based on the findings, right, that comes out of this 2-year process, we will then turn these proposals to the California State Legislature for adoption. So that's why the concept of power building and raising awareness about what's important, because the California legislature ultimately will have to adopt task force proposals. And that's also super important, right? That we have 2 elected officials on the task force. We have State Senator Stephen Bradford, and then we also have Assembly Member Reggie Jones Sawyer. It's helpful that the lead author of AB 3121 was then Assembly Member Shirley Weber. She's now the California Secretary of State. So these 3 people in and of themselves have great power and influence in the California State Legislature. We have obviously the support from the Congressional Black Caucus in California. And so I can't tell the future, but I think we have a great starting point and a great power base to ensure that all of our findings and all of our reparations proposals are ultimately adopted by the California State Legislature.
I'll just add on to that as a community, that's also our responsibility. Okay, so we need to be checked in as a community to make sure that the work is getting done on the task force, and then when proposals are coming out, that they're being implemented the way that our community needs them implemented.
Hey. So I was watching the meetings on ATM, which thanks again to shout out to ATM for having them out there so that no more everyday people can sit and just watch. Like I have it on one monitor while I'm working on another. I was excited to hear when the board first got put together that y'all had subpoena power, right? Because quite often I see, at least in my local government, where a lot of groups get put together, but they don't have the ability of subpoena power of saying, hey, no, you have to show up. You have to deliver results. So then when it came up while y'all were talking about it during one of your meetings about whether you should use the subpoena power or whether you should not, and the pluses and the negatives behind it, it kind of threw me off a little bit as an outsider because I am not in politics or anything like that. So I was actually quite curious. I had to ditch off and go to a meeting for work. Can you talk about that a little bit more and explain why certain folks were saying on the task force were saying, no, we shouldn't use our subpoena power, or we're trying to veer against it? And can you talk about when subpoena power would be used by the force?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. So again, I can't speak on behalf of the task force, but I am obviously aware of that conversation. And I think what they were trying to get at is that I think, a couple of members, the people who are part of the advisory committee that's handling the subpoena power, I think they just wanted us to be, cautious about the potential time that it might take to retrieve documents once we subpoena an entity, whether it's a private entity or a governmental agency. But then quickly heard other members like pushing back on that idea that we should kind of be. I guess he was pushing back, right? And essentially saying, well, we should look at people who have provided personal testimony to the task force thus far, and let's look at their stories and see if we can relate that subpoena power to their testimony. So, for example, right? We had Damon Goodman, who's part of the Crenshaw Subway Coalition. And Jovan Scott Lewis essentially said, we could potentially use the subpoena power to subpoena Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank is the entity, right? Deutsche Bank is the entity that decided to go with, white buyers for the mall, although the black buyers had more money, right? Jovan Scott Lewis kind of pushed back on the advisory committee and essentially stated, this is one of the ways that we can use the subpoena power. And then also I concluded the conversation by saying, I would love to see the task force use our subpoena power at least once before this task force ends, because one, it shows that we're just not some like dog and pony show, that we have, like, we mean business. They're going to come back to us next year, the advisory committee on subpoena power. And also I concluded by saying, I want to see this happen. So, I think it's great that even though there was some pushback from certain members, me and Jovan Scott Lewis, we kind of said, we want to see this happen. And so we'll see what happens, but, the jury isn't over on it. That's all I can really say.
Good afternoon, Chair. I'd like to know, maybe I missed it, but if I haven't, or if I haven't, has there been any study or any testimony given to the task force regarding racial discrimination or injustice towards Black religious institutions in the state?
No, actually, we haven't had a conversation about that, actually. But then that brings up another point, because we have a year and a half left for this effort. And at our last meeting, member Jovan Scott Lewis and I, the task force voted for member Jovan Scott Lewis and I to create an advisory committee to kind of reconceptualize what the task force can look like moving forward. So me and member Jovan Scott Lewis plan to meet many times between now and January to kind of reconceptualize like how things should look moving forward. So I'll definitely take that into consideration. I think another thing that I think has been left out of the conversation is education, right? Like bringing in Black college students and Black children from K through 12 and seeing how, there could be reparations proposals in those avenues as well. So I'm definitely taking that into consideration.
That scares me. I'm like, I wrote a whole proposal and sent it in by email for K through 12. So we're gonna send it again to make sure. Specifically, got you. Yep.
So you say it's a year and a half that the task force is going to remain. What happens after that? I mean, how do you continue the task force once this year and a half is over with? What's going to happen?
Well, the task force officially started in June of this year, right? So it's been 6 months between June and now. So we have the full year of 2022 and then until June 2023. So that's why I said we have a year and a half left. And then the task force kind of sunsets after we provide the actual reparations proposals to the California State Legislature.
Well, just another point on that, Mike, because I think I hear the question within the question, right? It's like, if we don't get the work done before the task force sunsets, what happens, right? And so I go back to, it's on our community to make sure that those that are in our neighborhoods asking for our votes understand how important this is to us, right? And so if you are going to go to Sacramento and you're going to represent locally here in Los Angeles, San Diego, Inland Empire, I think Marjorie left, but anywhere around, you want our vote, understand that we need this task force to continue until the work is ultimately done. And if that means that there's an extension or renewal or whatever the process may be that needs to happen, if there's subpoenas out there and we need the task force to continue so they can receive that information, process it, synthesize it, and come up with proposals, that's what our elected officials need to stand behind. And so we need to be standing on them to let them know that's what we need them to do.
I have a question. I think last week, if it wasn't last week, it was the week before, Representative Al Green and Senator Elizabeth Warren came out with a Slavery Remembrance Day resolution. And our organization, NAASDLA, pretty much issued a press release that said, this is great, like, because I believe that like our nation needs to recognize that. However, that's also low hanging fruit in the sense that, okay, you make a day observance and that doesn't put anything into our actual community. So our press release said, take from the National Parks Department $1.25 billion and actually take your resolution and make it a bill where our graveyards are restored and they become national cemeteries of, remembrance for slavery. Make some houses, like there's always some Black person's house that can't be preserved in our community. So you actually make them part of like a national archive where it's spread out throughout the South. That is not testimony that we've heard here in the state of California. I mean, Biddy Mason, we know, was our Los Angeles, a slave ancestor who had a bunch of land, and I think she owned property downtown on like 13th and whatever the street was. But she's, and you look at that corner and there's no sort, I mean, we know, but there's people who don't know. So I'm just wondering, how could we get, I don't know, the task force to maybe hear from some arts experts or some, even like, I don't know, if Civil War or, some experts in that space that we could bring into the task force to speak to some of those more commemorative things where our history is put on par, with the George Washingtons and the Thomas Jeffersons and the this and that, and the state actually put some money into doing something similar to what we suggested to Senator Warren and to Representative Green.
That's a great question. I think that comes down to a conversation about when we actually develop reparations proposals, because as you said earlier, right, there's 5 forms of reparations under international law. And as I was listening to you when you were talking about commemorations and statues and honoring our history, that reminded me of reparations under the form of satisfaction. So that could, a lot of different conversations, particularly in the South, but maybe in California, because there's remnants of the Confederacy in California. But like in the South, for instance, removing statues that honor Confederates and racist icons, and then instead reconstructing and implementing statutes or street names that honor our ancestors, right? So that's, I think, a conversation that we will have soon enough, for sure.
Coming to the mic because you touched my heart. I like to stay over there and just be a servant. But you touched my heart when you stated that, Miss Friday, because there's a rich history here in California, in Los Angeles, down these streets, and why we do not have little trails that basically honor the people that live here and built here. I'm going to talk about Blodgett, because Blodgett, his ancestor, was literally on the last reparation hearing. And I'm going to testify to this because my family has deep roots here in California, very, very deep roots. And I remember when I was little, my father only wanted to buy his property from Blodgett. Blodgett was real. He was a man that literally had his financial institution where the majority of Black people that were here in California were referenced over to him. But no one knows about that. No one talks about that. All you need to do is go down to South Central LA. That whole block, I remember when that whole block was Black. I remember all the families when I was little growing up that bought those homes. Now these homes have been regentrified, but I know I keep that home there because I'm split between 2 areas. But I keep that home there out of remembrance of my father and my mother and all the hard work that went into them to get those homes. And I know I made a commitment to make sure when I move on that that home goes to a Black person, because it is that important.
It is that important to me that we preserve that whole neighborhood. And I remember when there was horses that used to ride up here, and sometimes people forget about California, but our Black people here stood really strong. And no one talks about them anymore. No one sees them anymore. And everything is always built on top of what already they built. And no one remembers them. So you touched my heart when you said that, because, and normally I don't speak, so I'm gonna go back to my corner. But this was one thing that I just think as a reparation in the committee has to be very, very conscious of this, because we are going the way of the Native American, and that's not okay. We were here, we built, we stay strong. Allensworth, as you can see, floated down to here, to where Black folks who were working were able to buy property in that nature. Now that property, because of the relatives or whatever they may be, are dying out. People are stepping in and selling the property off to other people, and they're getting good plots of land, you guys, good plots of land, to where you can literally build on the back of your backyard. And I just think that is, it's a crying shame that that's not passed on to the next generation to build a stronger block and to build our own Harlem. So I say that to say, I love the job that you're doing up there. I think it's really important also too, that no Black person should have to pay to search their history. And I think you guys, we have to really stand strong with that. And that's what I'm going to ask the Reparation Committee, that no Black person should have to pay for a history that the United States destroyed. And it's all fragmented, it is all over the place, and we should not have to pay thousands of dollars just to find out who was that poor little slave that came across in that transatlantic. And now we have to shell out thousands of dollars just to find out who we are, and what we, and that to me is atrocious. I am going to have that as my plea, that, and I'm going to continue to keep pushing it, because you're going to hear me in the next hearings, and I'm going to keep saying it, because we should not have to pay for that. That is something that is owed to us, that is due to us, and it's up to the California to repair us in regarding with that. I'll go back to my corner. Thank you.
Thanks, Tish. We have two questions. Come up to the mic.
I just want to know the name that she was saying. I didn't catch the name, Ron.
Blodgett, B-L-O-D-D. You can go on your cell phone, look up the name Blodgett.
Give me, spell it.
Oh, B-L-O-D-D-G-E-T-T. And you'll find out the history of how his daughter married Colonel Allensworth, who's Allenstown is up there in Northern California. She married him, and they brought that whole mentality down here to the Los Angeles area, believe it or not. See, we're so rich in this, and it's just so sad when I think about how it's just going to the wayside.
We don't know those histories. To you for that. Before you hop in with your question, one thing I just want to share, I did a genealogy trip to Halifax County, North Carolina. And I don't know what the status of this is here in the state of California, but in the deed books, like the deed books went back to the 1500s, right? And Black folks, when they got married, if they didn't have enough money, there are bond books, because you actually took a loan to pay for your marriage license. But in addition to that, slavery was transactional. However, the slavery records are in the libraries because the state of North Carolina considers that historical. They don't consider it part of the business record. So it's not kept with the deeds and with the same level of integrity. I don't know here in the state what that difference is like when you start getting into county records. But that is also something I would ask that the task force to consider if and where, you know, we say slavery wasn't here, but to the extent that there was that recapturing that happened, because that came up in the testimonies, that those records not just be considered historical, where they're just left
library. I think they should have a higher standard of care, if that makes sense. I don't know how to ask what I'm asking, but I would just like to see a higher standard of care than it's historical. So it's just kind of over here and it's not really being maintained with high levels of integrity. So go ahead.
Peace and reparations, family. I want to thank you because I'm an introvert myself, so I like to stay in the background, but force me to do it. So I wanted this question for me. Thank you, sister, for all you're doing. Appreciate it. And the question was immigration. Is there going to be a focus on the next task force upon immigration, the impact that it has specifically dealt with us in California? Because the sister brought up gentrification, but the very first gentrification, because people think that it's just a bunch of hipsters and Volkswagen vans and lattes and dogs that took away our neighborhoods. But no, the actual first gentrifiers were immigrants, whether they be Latino, Italian, etc., Asian, because they take out resources and everything. And I know it's kind of hard, people cringe when we speak about that because we have a synonymous thinking of a big right winger talking about immigrants and these other people. But there has really been discrimination as far as job placements in certain programs. For example, how many jobs have you applied for that they said that they preferred Spanish speaking only? And even if you showed that it's skill that you could speak Spanish and you were bilingual, you did not fit the look. And I spoke Spanish, and I surprised some of the people because I used to be a medic, and I would speak to my Spanish speaking patients, and my partners that were Hispanic couldn't even speak it because they were like third, fourth generation. They would look at them really bad, and it's just the things you hear, like the content, as far as well as in construction too. We used to be a lot of we were excluded from a lot of the I'm trying to speak the foremans, a lot of the we were in a lot of the organized labors, but we were pushed out and picked over between immigrants. And we were pushed out of the unions and replaced with cheaper labor, even though technically a job is not supposed to do that, and they're supposed to pay a certain wage called prevailing wage. They will take a day laborer, and these people wouldn't even be qualified to hold a shovel, yet alone a heavy equipment, and they'll take the job right of a local person that can actually do it. And so we were a lot of journeymans, and we did a lot of trades. Like I got cousins and uncles and stuff that came from Louisiana that can lay brick, they could do ceramic work and do a whole bunch of stuff. But these jobs are dying out because they're picking out cheaper labor. And it's not just from the low labor, it's also from the top labor because of H-1B visas. They're taking over Silicon Valley and all the tech jobs. And it gets more insidious too, because now they're starting to use people that look like us and really don't have that resignation like we do, and they can look down on us and using us as a tool. But that's it. I'll speak my piece.
Thank you for your question. And I'm also an introvert, so I feel you. I guess to answer your question, the published agenda thus far doesn't have immigration as a topic explicitly. We have a conversation about anti-Black hate crimes that'll come up soon. And so obviously we know anti-Black hate crimes can be perpetuated by anyone, right? But that's something that Vice Chair Brown, I think, mentioned. I think there's hesitancy around it. And I'm just going to be really frank because, this is a task force that is tasked with studying the institution of slavery and the lingering effects of that institution, right? And just to give some pushback, I think a lot of people who may not want, this task force to cover immigration, I guess people don't see that connection between, immigration and the institution of slavery and the lingering effects of that institution. But there are people, obviously, it's a hard question. And again, I'm not speaking on behalf of the task force, so I can't really say, whether that will be an explicit topic. But I will say, for folks who are passionate about it, feel free to make your voice heard through public comment.
So let me put this in some additional context, and I'm going to take the benefit of there being two of you commissioners in this room. Los Angeles Port does not have a commissioner that is African American, Black, African. They don't. That we are not represented in the Port of Los Angeles, and we know the Port of Los Angeles does major business. The Port of Los Angeles also, the truckers in the Port of Los Angeles, I think the statistic is something if it's not 90%, it might even be like 94%, but I think it's 90% of the port drivers are actually not even Americans. And the port drivers have sought help, ironically, from the Black community, but there was a time when the longshore people, I don't know all the right phrases, but the longshoremen at the port, those folks that move the containers, the drivers actually lived in South LA and they worked at the port. And there is now a push to have the truck drivers be compensated wages, because a lot of the companies that use those truck drivers charge them back for everything. They charge them back for insurance. They say that they're independent contractors, but they're controlling the work, this, that, and the other. To me, that seems like a place or an area where the task force could get some historic information from that subpoena power to see, and I forget, I don't remember if it was NATO, and I don't remember if it was the building of the port in Mexico by the Chinese that kind of changed like that whole dynamic. But that to me seems like an area that has historical context. There is a before and after. There's our representation and then our diminishing representation. And to me, that seems like it could fall potentially under the purview. And the other thing, even though it's less prevalent here in California, when the Black farm workers in the South unionized, our dear United States of America's government decided to work with Mexico with the, God, I just had the name. It starts with an M, the Something Act. And that was like the first negotiated country to country act that brought Mexican farm laborers into the South in order to replace Black union laborers who were demanding more money. And so
North American Free Trade? NAFTA?
No. We're talking back in the 30s and the 40s.
Okay.
Oh my God. I'm gonna get on my phone. I'm gonna find the right word for y'all. The Bracero Act. I don't know where I got an M from. The Bracero Act. And if you go look into the Bracero Act, that act replaced a lot of our Black tradesmen, farm working tradesmen who were unionized. And when they unionized, then the government came in and smacked it down. So the question again, in a California context is, did that happen here? Were there Black farmers before there were migrant farmers? That's something I think the task force could consider. So to me, it's always about having a point of reference and context. The Port of LA to me is like fair game because it is what it is.
So I just want to lend that to you. And Karen, what's up, bro?
What's going on, brother?
Hey, what's up, Politics and Black Team and Madam Chairwoman? I just have a question based on what we're talking about right now. My brother who's working in technical fields, is the task force looking to specifically set up programs for Black ownership and training in the tech trades and in the traditional tradesmen, because there's a shortage right now in the country and these trades, and these are six-figure jobs across the country. And so if we're talking about a direct way to empower our community that is historically relevant and rectifying the moral wrong of specifically keeping this out, this seems like a great way. And so that's also with apprenticeships programs for high-tech jobs, which is a little harder to create equity, but definitely creating equity and ownership in the tradesmen. So are these, I haven't heard this mentioned, so are these topics or remedies that are being considered? And can we get some of our tradespeople or our representatives to talk about this specifically?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Absolutely. So our next hearing occurs on Thursday and Friday, January 27th and January 28th. And we are going to discuss technology on the first day and then all aspects of health on the second day. So we're definitely planning on talking about technology. And to your point about trade, I'll definitely look into that and see about including that during the technology portion of the hearing. Thank you for that.
Thank you. So I'm late. I was late, so you might have glossed over this or covered it in the first hour. So I apologize for that. I have a legit excuse. I came down from the Bay Area, so that 405 was.
Welcome, brother. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I always underestimate the 405. But we've been hearing a lot of talk about how local initiatives or state initiatives, like in Evanston and now California, how that may impact the federal AB 40 and how that could affect that. So I was wondering if you could touch on how you feel that it may affect it or it won't impact that, what that relationship is. And basically that's my question.
Was the question about, can you clarify? Was it about whether?
So I read that they say, well, this is how reparations should happen. Maybe we don't need AB 40. We can do it state by state, like I said, Evanston. HR 40, I'm sorry, HR 40. Yeah. So what's the
Oh, well, I definitely believe that there needs to be reparations on the federal level, and AB 30, AB 3121, and I think Chad and Friday and the folks from NAASD can speak to this as well in detail, but in the text of AB 3121, there's a clause there that says, in the event or when the state provides reparations to Black Californians, that does not mean that the federal government is off the hook, right? It pretty much states that, Black Californians are owed reparations from the state and the federal level. That's literally in the bill text.
Yeah, you kind of said it all there, Camilla. I want to recognize Marcus Champion at the back of the room.
Woo-hoo!
Because as humble as the brother is, he's a warrior when it comes to developing language that appears now currently in AB 3121. So we got to recognize the people that are out here doing the work, right? The other thing I'll say is I completely agree with Camilla. There are measures that the state can take, but reparations is a federal project, and that's squarely in line with what Dr. Darity also writes about in his book. We have to understand that state budgets all combined aren't enough to pay the trillions of dollars that we're owed. So we need federal policy. This has to be a federal program. But HR 40 has been sitting still stagnant since 1989. Okay, our federal representatives have not been doing their job. So here in California, we have an opportunity to show them how we need them to do their jobs. We have an opportunity to set a precedent and to make a model for the federal government. And that's what we're trying to do. And so we talk a lot, Friday, NAASD, CJEC, we talk a lot about how we can leverage what's happening here in California into the federal program of reparations. But what we also need you to understand is right now, HR 40 is not AB 3121. There are serious problems in HR 40. I'm not going to go into all of the problems right here today, but understand that bill is trash. It's not going to get us what we need and what we deserve and what we're owed. So there's advocacy that's happening around HR 40 from our groups where we are working hard to get that language updated, to get that language changed. So that bill actually does what it says it wants to do. So AB 3121, completely different animal. HR 40, we got a lot of work to do there.
One of the things that I want to interject to the conversation, I think two things. A time check, we have about I would say 7 to 12 minutes left to this particular event. Tiffany has called in several times and asked that the AB 3121 task force actually submit a letter to President Biden asking that he essentially make HR 40 an executive order. And I believe in this December's hearing, at the end of the hearing, there was some conversation about whether or not the task force would issue a letter supporting that ask. I think it was kind of left up in the air, but I do want to mention it because it means that the task force is going to ultimately influence HR 40 in one way or another, whether it's at the congressional level or whether it is at the presidential level. The ask has been made of the task force, and I guess we'll have to just see what comes of that. But that was a discussion on the second day, I think, of hearing.
Yeah, it was a discussion. It was raised, and we decided that we will return at our next hearing in January and have a broad discussion about what we call low-hanging fruit, which are what are some early victories, what are some things that the task force can do as a collective right now, some things that we can do without having to wait towards the end of the process. So we're going to have a conversation about that, and I'm sure the letter will be a part of that conversation.
Good afternoon, family. My name is Reverend William Moses Somerville. I am a congressional candidate for 47th Congressional District. Most specifically, full-chested comprehensive reparations. Obviously, Madam Chairwoman, thank you for the work that you're doing and the heavy lifting you're doing up there on State Capitol Hill. Only suggestion or further suggestion I would ask from the task force is that as it's being put together, as we're putting proposals and so forth, in order for the preservation and the continuation of Black Californians to be addressed and supported specifically, I would like to submit a California Reparations Bureau or a California Bureau for reparations. When we talk about the historical preservation, when we talk about, are we getting the right money we're supposed to get? Are we, and are we getting the job protection specifically that we need? Because they don't clearly, the employment system is very unjust to us here in the state of California. Also, just real quick, I have a food giveaway as our campaign tomorrow at 12:30 to 3:30, where our campaign is giving away food. If you know someone who's in need of it, come get a flyer from me, obviously. And and we go forth. So serve the people.
Thank you, brother. And just a quick note, when we talk about needing politicians to do what we need them to do, young brothers like this that we're talking about. So don't discount what this brother is attempting to do. Get engaged here. Get engaged. What's your website? What's your website?
Thank you. SomervilleForCongress.com. 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 Mantra, message, and motto is serve the people. That's what we are. God bless you.
If your candidate is not talking about reparations like that, they don't deserve your vote. Any other questions?
All right, so,
Oh, we got one. We got
Uh-oh.
one from the policy writer. Let's go.
So, quick question. We already know what slavery is. Why do we need to study? Why do we need to hear personal testimonies? What's the purpose of this task force? Why do we need all this? They just give us money.
I love you playing devil's advocate. Okay, I'll start. And thank you for the question, Marcus, because I know a lot of people think that. So I said earlier, we have to fight the urge to skip steps. And we have to understand that this is the process. This is the process that the Japanese went through. This is the process that the Jewish community went through. We have to collect, and there's never been a process like this. This is the first of its kind. This is historic. We've never had a state body try to comprehensively catalog the effects of slavery, Jim Crow, and all of the ensuing atrocities. So this is writing the book. Okay, that's the study part. But then beyond that, as you heard earlier in AB 3121, we're actually going to get some proposals out of this law, and ultimately to what Mike was talking about earlier, the checks that we're all expecting to show up. So we got to do the work, people. We got to do the work, every bit, every step of the work. We can't skip steps. We can't skip grades. We can't jump from A to Z. We got to go through every letter. We got to dot every I. We got to cross every T to make sure this happens, and it happens the right way.
And to follow up with that, right, the Japanese reparations process, it took 3 years, right, to cover, how long were they interned?
Like 2 years, I think.
Right, so we have 2 years to cover, over 400 years of history. So, we're definitely, doing the work.
Hello, y'all. My name is Magic Collins. I'm a mental health advocate. And one of the things I want to know is how are we securing access to quality mental and physical care? Because that is one of the main things that puts people in debt is medical debt. So with reparations, since we are at the top, the wrong end of the stats when it comes to diabetes, lupus, so many different medical conditions, how do we secure reparations for our people who has systemic medical issues because of all the things we've been through over decades and centuries?
Member Grill, did you want to take that question? We have another person on the task force, Member Grill. She is a mental health expert, so I kind of want to give it.
So the January meeting actually is going to cover health and mental health and public health. And there are a lot of things that we need to understand in that regard, not just how do we secure quality services, but also what damage has been done to our health and our mental health, and how will those things be factored into any forms of reparations. So.
Thank you, Dr. Rose. I hope y'all feel fired up.
All right, everybody. Because I was standing, I was trying to wrap us up.
No, we want to make sure we're taking our questions.
I wanted to know, has anyone talked about the candidacy for mayor of Los Angeles? We're understanding that Karen Bass is running. And my main concern for whoever's going to run Black as mayor for Los Angeles is that, are they for reparations? Are they for the malicious land covenants that are still plaguing Black home ownership, the appraisal values? I was reading Brookings Institute came out with a fact that Black people are underappraised by 23%, which amounts to about $156 billion in lost equity, which could have given 8 million Black students their paid tuition, which could have funded 4 million Black businesses. So my concern for Karen Bass is that she's not talking about reparations, and if she's not, then she should not be a candidate for the city of
Amen.
Los Angeles. So if there are people who are out there as candidates, I'd like to know who they are. My name is Jackie Winter. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to attempt to answer that, sort of. Yes, ma'am.
So to give you some indication of the importance of reparations to Representative Bass, the reason I'm on the task force is because of Representative Bass. She put my name forward to make sure that certain perspectives would be included, especially health and mental health, education, and the perspective of community organizing, right? So reparations is important to her, and I will make sure that I let her know that the community is asking her to speak up more about it.
And can I add to that, Dr. Grills? And I'm sure Friday will talk about this, but the city has convened a reparations task force that Friday Jones has been appointed to. So we have a local city commissioner here. But one of the things we want to, if Karen Bass is to win office, is that commission item are pushed to the back if she takes office. But we want to know that from any candidate for office, for mayor, right? So Friday, with that, I'll let you.
So as Chad throws me into this commissioner position for the city of LA, like Camila, I cannot represent the city of Los Angeles as a commissioner here today in this event. But with that said, a couple of things that I want to share. One of the reasons that CJEC has been so effective at the state level is because they are part of a three-pronged, how we do politics here is in three prongs. We deal at the federal level, we deal at the state level. For us in LA, we deal with the city of Los Angeles. NAASDLA has met with Karen, and she stood up against, I guess, the Deutsche Bank and trying to buy the Crenshaw Mall. She is one of the regional representatives, if you will, that actually said something about that particular project. When we asked her to take language back, she did that for us. And as she and the other people are putting their hats in the ring for mayor of city of Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles' task force is also on a 2-year mark. To her, for her to lean into whatever her reparations advocacy and position is, to be more vocal in that space. But she has been helpful to us when some other, that's what I will say. And all we do is reparations. Advocacy. So I thank you for saying that, because it's important. It's important that
Thank you
City of
for saying
LA's
that,
task force is
because
going to continue. It's important for some of the other reasons that you named. It's important for some of the reasons that you named. Thank you for that.
Share more.
I want to thank you guys for coming out. I want to thank Dr. Grills for coming in and stepping in. I thank you all for your comments. I want to thank ATM Media.
Shout out ATM.
For making sure they capture the history. I want to shout out Kona Pizza. We have sandwiches over here from Subway. Kona Pizza's outside. But that is one of our co-chairs, small businesses that she it took a lot of effort for her to get off the ground. So if pizza is more your speed, please support her. I want to shout out Art in Northern California. We already did CJEC. I want to shout out Black. We are here. Politics and Black. We are here of January. We think. Yeah, we are on hiatus. Yeah, we are on hiatus. Coming after this, but this was important that we show up through the remainder of the hearings. We will be in community. We're gonna have to figure out something to get to the Valley. Sister left, but we're gonna figure out how to find different locations in LA, different locations in LA, so that we can make sure that your voices are heard, so we can make sure that you guys know the dates and the time of these hearings. Public testimony is always at 9 a.m. Camila, make sure we start on time. That's the time. 3 minutes. I'm gonna tell y'all. 3 minutes. About 450 words. About 450. You might even want to do 400 just to make sure if you get a little rattled that you got some extra 450 words. Take the time to write down the things that you want to say. Even if you don't get it all in, send an email so they have that testimony. If there are expert witnesses that you want to see, presenting something from the church, or an analysis of the church, something on mental health, even though we know mental health is coming. Please take the time to send the emails in. I want to make sure you give also your email, if that's okay, so that they can, if they don't, y'all don't think it's gonna reach the task force, I want to make sure you have the chair's email also, so that you know you're gonna be heard.
So my email is KV as in Victoria, M as in Moore, 2118 at columbia.edu. Now think about it, I should just give out a simple one. Camila VM at gmail.com. So KAMILAH V as in Victoria, M as in Moore at gmail.com. And you can use either one, the KVM 2118 at columbia.edu or Camila VM at gmail.com. I use both regularly. And thank you all. I was a bit nervous. This is the first time I've kind of done something like this. But thank you all.
I just wanted to say in closing, I wanted to acknowledge the Freedmen's Bureau of California who sponsored the
Yeah, thank you.
I want to thank once again ETM for coming in all the way down to Minnow. We have people who came from San Diego.
Yep.
Inland Empire. So I want to thank everyone and
the Bay Area.
Take your message back home. Message back home.
Yes. Tell your family members, tell your friends, coworkers. This is something that we have to build our own. This is something that we have to build our own for. We have to make sure that we stay engaged, and we're here to help you do it. You can follow us on social media, NAASDLA. That's on Twitter. That's on Facebook. I am Friday Jones. On Twitter, Facebook, stay engaged, CJECofficial.org, NAASDLA.org. We're here.
Before we leave, we're going to do a quick round. Yamoya is going to come up, and you guys have got tickets. And so we're going to raffle off a few things. And please take sandwiches. You said Subway, but different mics.
Mike
Please take sandwiches home with you.
Okay, everyone, thank you very much. I appreciate everyone for coming, and shout out to Chair Camila Moore for coming through. Really appreciate it, and Dr. Grills as well. We appreciate it, and everybody for coming and participating. This is wonderful. Okay, and also one more thing before we go, my partner Kim Mims would like to give a shout out to my partner Kim Mims. Please, yes, thank you very much. We are currently in pre-production for a documentary called Reparations Now. We would really like your support. Before you leave, I have some flyers right there on that table. If you can please take some, we have a GoFundMe that we're raising funds right now. Please spread the word because we're the only Black folks. Got to do it for us, man. Anybody else is going to do us, we got to do the heavy lifting. All right, so let's go raffle off some stuff. You can say, I don't know. Just tell me. Seven 222.
Remember this old program called Room 22? Right. All right.
All right.
So I have we're gonna all help the young lady out, okay? One member of the California Reparations Task Force, AB 21.
Share more.
All right.
It works. It works.
Get an ETM mask. All right. Woohoo! All right, let's see what else. I don't want to look.
I don't think I got a ticket anymore.
Okay. Okay. All right, cool. Okay, last numbers ending in, you said 218? 218? Anyone got 218?
Oh.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.